Hello, 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 and welcome back from our little mini break. I hope you got something to drink, tea, water, whatever it is that hydrates you, because we are moving straight ahead with our next amazing, powerful speaker. Nicole Gotthold is an EME alignment coach, breathwork, and energy practitioner who works with women recovering from people pleasing, overgiving, wounded hearts, and burned out creative minds. She helps her clients leverage several modalities to find and eliminate root causes on the somatic, energetic, and mental aspects of self. And I am so happy to welcome her to the stage. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you because you have such an amazing story. Okay, everybody, look below because this is what Nicole's going to talk about today. And I think this is a really fascinating story because I believe that every one of us at some point in their life has met their tiger. So I would love to know where your tiger is.
I think the interesting thing about people pleasing and the thing that really made me feel like this was such an important topic is that I didn't know what I was afraid of. Because I think what I was most afraid of in the beginning of this journey was sitting in a quiet room by myself. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was. It was right after my husband passed away, and I was in autopilot, in get everything better, make everything better mode. And I was taking care of all of the things and couldn't cry. For about 6 months, I was just in this place of masculinity and creative and all of that. And I remember there was one point right after he passed where I was in the shower and I had said to myself, like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do this on your own? And normally I would hear things like, suck it up, keep going, put up your boots, you got things to do. But that one moment of vulnerability, which I had ignored for the next 6 months, was you need to be someone you'll follow. And I ignored it. I know now because I didn't know who that was. That was the scariest thought in the world. How do I be someone I follow when I don't know what I want? When I thought about what I wanted after and how I was going to create a life that would be good for my children, all I thought of was all the things that people would have thought about that decision and not what would have lit me up because I was in a state of fight or flight. I was creating a life out of fear. And I would say the first year was creating a soft landing, a place where everything was going to be okay. And it was maybe, I'd say about a year into it, I am at this point, when he first passed away, I was 340 pounds and I had lost about 65 pounds, doing it all the ways that I had always done it, diet, harsh exercise, all of it. But I went to a retirement ceremony for a fellow Navy friend. My husband was in the Navy when he passed away. And he was supposed to be the MC at that event. And I was really, everything was fine. I'm going to go. The kids will stay at home. It'll be great. Fine. Great. And I was in the hotel room the night before and I was so tense. I had a ton of junk food. And I hadn't eaten a bit of sugar in an entire year. But I just couldn't anymore. It was just too heavy. And it wasn't even at the surface. Like it didn't make any sense. But the level of self-disgust that I had after that moment is one that I had never really experienced in all of my time of overeating. And I did something for the first time that I'd never done before, which is intentionally vomit it up. And decided in that moment that no one would ever need to know because it never happened before. It's never going to happen again. I'll just figure it out and move on. And then 2 weeks later, it happened again at home. And that was the moment that I realized that I need to fundamentally look at things differently, that this is not a place that I can go to. There were lots of other rock bottom moments that I think come naturally with major trauma, doing things differently. But this was the first time that I was making a choice before what I considered to be rock bottom, that I need to be living from a place of joy And I had realized that's not what I had. My brother's wedding was that summer also. And I had all these dreams of what life would be like by then. And none of that was happening at Christmas. I was supposed to be happier than this. And it was in those quiet moments alone when I realized that this life I was trying to create, I wasn't living it at all. I wasn't happy in those moments. It was also a point where I had been fed up with it. I think in the beginning I gave myself a lot of grace. I shouldn't be happy. I just lost my husband. But at that point, I needed the joy in order to keep my head above water, to keep going. And I knew that if all I was doing was just putting the fires out, you know, worrying for things before they even happened, that I would not ever be able to create a life of joy. I was still just making other people happy because it looked like it was okay. And so through the process, I had been reading lots of self-help books. I have a wonderful trauma therapist who still works with me and the children. Um, but it just didn't seem like enough. It felt like once a week going there and talking it through just wasn't enough progress at this point. I was completely impatient. Process of waiting on other people, like I needed to look inward. But it was very challenging to look inward alone without any tools, to feel like I was trying to be different. But when I really tried, it wasn't any different, really making those moments of difficulty and transformation mean that it wasn't going to happen. So with the help of a nutrition doctor, who had encouraged me to have surgery. And I think I could have easily had surgery and it would have been a good option. I just needed to prove to myself that I could do it. I needed to believe in myself. And that's really all it was about. In terms of, why that was the choice, I needed to know I could do it. And if I couldn't, if it was something that had failed, I had made the promise that I would have the surgery anyway. So from August of 22 to December 31st, the deal was if I could at least lose another 35 pounds, hit the 100-pound mark, then I wouldn't have the surgery and I could do it on my own. So that was enough for her to say, okay, I'll work with you, on the diet and exercise, but that's the deal. And so I went to CrossFit. And of course, it seems like it's still masculine, but I have to tell you, it was in the beginning and it was hard, but it also created such a sense of connection in the body, of somatically releasing so much frustration, that I now see that it was the beginning of really getting in touch with and loving and forgiving the body. To walk in at 45 years old to a gym that in my mind was for people who were elite athletes only, and I'd gotten, this is so funny. I'd gotten a free month from it and thought my son would have it. And he's like, no. So I just said, okay, I'll try it. They were so kind and so wonderful. And, I was an athlete for a good portion of my young life and I couldn't do more than a few sit-ups. It was a real breath of reality, of forgiveness and of self-love to show up there every day and to go through that process and to know that when you're transforming, your tiger shows up over and over and over again. It shows you who you are, it shows you what you're made of, and it shows you whether or not you're really working. If you're disassociating or not really looking at it, it can be really easy to be on autopilot. You can go into those whatever the behavior is, whether it's eating, whether it's addiction to a substance, whether it's, for me, validation from other people could be a disassociation, and even energy work for me can be a disassociation if it's not paired with really understanding, leaning into that. And so that, I think, was the first clue that the work was real work, because I felt like it was challenging, but then I was proud of myself. I started carrying myself differently. I started believing that even if I had only lost XYZ weight, that it was still change. Because in that process, I loved myself more. I found out what I liked. I started to feel confidence that if I wanted to wear something silly, I would wear something silly. If I wanted to style my hair a certain way, that was going to be my choice. I did all kinds of things that many folks might consider, what we sometimes might associate with like a midlife crisis or whatnot. But it's ultimately, for the first time, I felt like I was really, without apology, doing and trying on aspects of myself for myself. And I mentioned that I was reading different books, and the book that I had read, and that we both learned from EME with Mandy Morris. And the thing that I loved about her book was this sense of empowerment of the self that she gave us, and she pulled from lots of different places. She didn't, invent everything that we talk about in the program, but it's such a story of understanding who you are, loving yourself for it, including the things you fear, including the things that you have done when you were in survival mode. That incredible sense of compassion and forgiveness that I'd often given everyone else, I hadn't been given myself. And seeing that that's really, really the most important piece of it. So once I started looking at, okay, why can't I sit in a quiet room by myself? Why am I so afraid to look in the mirror and see myself as someone that I love? All the answers started coming. And what started with the obvious, okay, you're sad because your husband passed away and your life feels like it's falling apart. I started to see the patterns of who I was throughout my entire life and where the root was and how that informed things. And putting those pieces together, I started to realize how I learn, how I expand, and then what happens every time you have that cycle of growth, which is why I look at it as transcending your fear, but first knowing what it is. Because sometimes the thing you fear most is letting go of the thing that makes you feel safe. It's not always the tiger. Sometimes it's getting out of the comfy, warm spot, which was a big, deep one for me. I had to face the fact that it was going to take a lot of hard work to change my physical form. And it was going to take a lot of work to walk and be the person I was wanting to be. And that ultimately, at the end of the day, the only one who gets to decide who I am is me. Which means that if I sat quietly, then I would have to face the fact that up until now, I have let myself be this.
Oh.
Which means that every long relationship I took too long to get out of, including friendships or jobs, or every time I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it, no problem, but inside gave a little piece of my self-worth away, that I was the only one to blame. Yeah. People don't take advantage of what you don't give away. And when I had to start telling people that I had to be different, I needed to also include my part. Like, look, I know that this is how it went and I need to be different, but I don't hold you responsible for what you didn't ask for. I'm not changing because I don't think you're good enough for me or because we need to have a different relationship because you haven't done it the right way. I'm saying this has to change for my own breath of fresh air and ability to exhale in my own life. And I fully take responsibility for my part. And that is the thing I didn't want to sit quiet in a room and hear. Because the truth is, as I started to change more and more, that is the very thing when I was listening that I realized I was always my worst critic. I was always the one who said I wasn't worthy. I was the one who said, that must be why they said that. 90% of the time, the villain was the one in my own head. And so as I explored, wow, how do I show up? What does it look like for me? How am I sad? Why am I sad? How does my subconscious show up? How does my willingness show up? How does it feel in the body? Which up until this point, I think that was completely cut off. It's now turned on fully and experiencing life a whole new way. And spiritually, being raised one religion that I had turned away from, spiritually, I would say I was pretty numb at that point. I wasn't looking to anyone else other than humans here to sort of create the life for me that I wanted. But that's also why I shut off the ability to dream, because that's where it comes from. Whether you call it quantum healing, whether you call it energy, whether you call it a god or a religion, that's where we get our inspiration, our ability, the possibility of the unknown. And if you fear that because you don't value that you can handle it, then you don't start seeking it. Comfortable is easier. So turning on all of those elements, I think some people, what I have found is some people, when I say busy minds or disconnected bodies or really burnt out, I say all of those because for everyone it's a little different. It's a little mixture of difference depending on how they've shown up in their lives. But ultimately, that's part of, I say it's part of their whole self DNA, how they showed up, what felt empowering and what didn't, how their parents raised them. All of that whole self inventory is so important for knowing what you're going to keep going with. Like what she says, what you're going to pick up and keep and what you're going to put down. But what you're going to put down has to mean that who's coming forward is strong enough to carry it. Right? Because your whole world around you is going to start questioning if you're really going to be different. Right? How are you doing this? This is not how you were raised. All those moral questions. Good people stick by family. Good people do all of these things. And so the very aspect of me being good could be called into question, right? So you better believe you know who you are before you're going to start facing the tigers outside. Because ultimately that tiger's right there when you're questioned. And what you do in that moment, what you embody, as hard as it is or as easy as it is, that's actually the time that you're transformed. We look at what we intend. We heal what hurts in our subconscious or in emotions. We recognize how our emotions show up and that they're beautiful feedback for what has to be healed. We call in from the universe all this beautiful wonderfulness, and we ask and say, I want to be different. And so this is the point at which I believe when you face that tiger, that you show the universe, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, and your body, that you got it handled. So when the universe shows up the same way it always has, it says, okay, are you ready? Are you ready to be different? If you make that moment mean that nothing has changed and that you are still unworthy and how come my life can't be different, that's exactly what you are. If you in that moment say, okay, let's check in. Let's do things differently. Let's try something new. That's the moment that you are flying your helicopter with all the controls on, right? Instead of on autopilot, which is what a lot of us do. When you tap into your spirituality for the inspiration of who you want to be, when you check your subconscious and lovingly say, look, busy mind, I've got this under control. And then I call it a tiger, but honestly, it's only a tiger because we've let that little child of ourselves, our inner child, get so loud and angry that it looks like a tiger, but that's all it is. It's a little girl or a little boy that hasn't been listened to or loved. And it needs you to acknowledge it. It needs you to say, I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to walk together through this. That is literally the moment that I felt like I transcended from my inner child to a goddess, to my own inner goddess, right? Is when you can look at your problems the way you would your child and say, we just need a Band-Aid. You're going to be fine. Come on. Or you know what? It's okay. It hurts. Let's take a minute and feel it and feel through it in our heart and in our body. When we can turn off the things that are alarm bells and we can be mindful, we can be in coherence, all the things I'm sure lots of the speakers are going to talk about, all the different tactics. For me, that was the key to transformation. So when, for example, one of my favorites is, are you sure you don't want pie? It's Thanksgiving. How can you not have pie? Are you denying every craving you ever had? Is this really healthy, Nicole? Are you doing it the right way? Or when I share with people my spiritual journey, as you can imagine, there's lots of questions there, or relationships, or all of it, literally everything that you change, from hair extensions to new car to house to whether the kids are listening to different music. The ability to have compassion for yourself allows you to have compassion for others too. because you know that it's not meaning anything about you. It's just that they're just not used to the new you. And so the beautiful answer is in December 15th, I had already met my goal of 100 pounds. And so she was blown away as to why and how that happened. There's a student in the office that came in. They were like, "How did you do this? Nobody can do that on their own in our program." And I shared with them that when I take the food away, I had to have another way to cope with everything that I was coping with, and that I had found that. I had found that in the spirituality. I had found that in using breath work to process and somatically release the emotions that weren't mine, to experience emotions and to stand up for myself. That's the best way that I can explain it. But there are moments where I was able to defy shame in a somatic breathwork release. There were moments I stood in my power. There were moments I connected with truth. It all depends on where you are in your journey, but I was able to tap into spiritually and in the body what I needed to tap into so that I didn't need to disassociate with food. And facing the tiger every day, okay, what's coming up for me today? How am I going to cope with it? What am I going to do to decide, is it mine or am I releasing it? It doesn't have to be a harsh reality or a battle of a Nordic warrior. It can be a gentle ease. And so that's what I did day after day. And by this past June, I've now lost 165 pounds total. And I'm no longer pushing for a goal. It's just a matter of living in who I am, embodying the version of myself that I keep expanding to. And it's a vast, it picks up a speed once you begin the transformation process. And I'll tell you, the secret is this process doesn't stop. No matter how advanced you are in your journey of life, no matter how successful you are, this is not just the way that I have healed core wounds of my whole life. It is how I am continuing to now dream in excellence. Because with every step of expansion, that little tiger comes up again and says, "Are you sure? At this level, with this much risk?" I mean, yes, you can have a business, but can you write a book? I don't know. Yeah, you can have new friends in a new country, but can you get on a stage of 100,000 people? Right? With each step, the next step is just as scary as the one before. And that tiger, whatever it was you questioned, will question again. But we get better at recognizing it. And the amount of time we sit in the is shorter. And we snap in knowing that we have all the controls. That's entirely our choice. And it's entirely our choice whether we do want to write the book or get on the stage. And our why and who we are and love of self, that heart is your compass of which direction you go in. And as long as you can tap into it and know it, your tiger is your friend. Because it gives you like a spotlight for exactly where to go next.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom, for everything that you just shared. That was incredible. And you just touched on it, but you touched on breath work. And I cannot believe the freebie that you are bringing to everybody, like everyone watching this right now, or, you can claim this in the link over there. Nicole, tell us what you're bringing.
So it is a full somatic journey. And these journeys have evolved for me from a scripted experience around themes to one that's a bit more intuitive and I feel a lot more effective because I walk you through tapping into your inner truth. So we take some time, about 15 to 20 minutes, to do some holotropic breath work, which is an upregulation. It taps you into your subconscious and takes you on a ride through whatever it is that you want to let go of. Whatever you've decided or inside you needs to no longer be part of your journey. And it really helps you call in to the feeling, the vibration of what you want to manifest, and allows you to feel in your body where that block is so that you can release it. Energetically, I work with you during the process so that you're getting a healing at the same time. And when you're done with this experience, in my experience, is you experience exactly what is needed so that you know how to get through your next block and to your next step. And so it's really an experience, a journey that's different for each person, even in a group.
Yes. And I have experienced it before, so I can only recommend the breath work sessions. Wow, this is a difficult word for me today. Anyway, and for everybody who has upgraded to VIP, what can they expect?
So these experiences are wonderful and really great for getting into the deep blocks. But what I have found is a daily practice of tapping in using meditation, breath work, and your own energy clearing is really like everyday nutrition. And so you can stay on top of where you're at, start your day with intention, and really minimize the amount of fight or flight or stress or any of that that you even have in your life if you can have control of your nervous system with your own nose. And so they'll get two freebies. One is a 5 minute everyday calm and focus, and the other is like a quick cup of coffee. It's fantastic. It is a breath process that's 5 minutes that you will get the best moment of awakeness and clarity without the jitters of coffee. It's fantastic. So it's really two experiences to help you understand the power you have over your body.
Ooh, thank you so much. This is incredible. And so, thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on and sharing your story and the gifts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.